Hello everyone, my name is Matthew Mercer. I'm a voice actor and the Dungeon Master for Geek and Sundry's Critical Role, and welcome to my video series on tips and tricks for Game Masters and Dungeon Masters alike. Today, we're talking about the divisive Rule of Cool. So for those of you who aren't aware what the Rule of Cool is, it's a trope that essentially means a willing suspension of disbelief for the sake of a cool moment. It happens all the time in film and television and a lot of storytelling of a visual nature. It's just, you know, being able to suspend your disbelief enough to let something cool happen and not dwell too much on the specifics of it. In RPGs, this generally refers to occasionally allowing the chance for some ridiculous stunts or unique interpretations of some of the rules or features of a system for a possibly cool moment. I think it's a really fun element to use in moderation. You need to establish early on in your game with your players how much of a level of crazy you're willing to allow. Just so everyone kind of understands the general feel, the flow of the story, and what to try for and what not to try for. A lot of non-fantasy RPGs, a lot of modern systems and like low-power horror systems tend to adhere to strict realism in player actions because they build their tension. That's how a lot of the game's danger elements are built around. So for those, the Rule of Cool is a little more sparing comparatively. And it's not always good for a game story to incorporate a lot. You know, tension, difficulty, and fear are powerful storytelling tools, and if the players feel like they can do any wacky thing, any crazy idea at any given point in time and probably be okay, then it takes away an element of that. So you want to be sparing with its use, but you also don't want to squash the player's creativity, at least not physically. So for the GM and the player, you know, if you agree that that's something you could occasionally pull into a game, be sparing with it, and you know, pick the right moments to have those heroic, you know, stand-up experiences to do something crazy. You know, there is a need for the GM to maintain an internal consistency with the rules in the world so it stays cohesive and that people understand the boundaries. And you don't want the stakes and the reality and the tension to have less weight, which can happen if you allow too many of these to happen in succession. Gauge which player actions are viable as a GM and which you might consider abuse. A cool Rule of Cool moment, in my opinion, would be like if somebody decided, for instance, a sorcerer has a fog spell. Cool, that's a fog spell. It usually just clouds a little area. What if they decided they wanted to use that fog spell to create enough moisture that if they, you know, funneled it into an area that was extremely flammable, it would actually dampen the flames? That's a creative use of it. It's not really a Rule of Cool moment. It's a creative use. So, you know, you can find that that separation there. If somebody decided they had an ability that let them slow fall, like a monk in, you know, 3.5, they decided they wanted to use that to coast down the entire side of a castle as it was crumbling. That's kind of intense, but it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. And so from a cinematic standpoint, it could be a really cool character moment if they're like carrying a special item they just stole and it's their only way of escape. I would say go ahead and allow it, possibly incorporating some skill checks and some challenge, you know, some difficulty to that experience. But even if the rules don't implicitly say that a person in theory could continue to coast that down a series of long services in a row, you know, don't be afraid to bend the rules or loosen up a little bit to let those cool character moments shine through. You know, this also involves in battles and terrain, you know, having to escape on a collapsing ice bridge. You know, it sounds very cinematic and very kind of Michael Bay film aspect, and that can be a really cool moment in a story occasionally. But if every single moment in the game is that, once again, it kind of loses its weight, it loses its cohesiveness, and the quieter moments just seem boring by comparison, and players seem less invested in the story and the tension in between. But also for people that do not abuse the Rule of Cool and, you know, try and constantly break your game or go far beyond what their character's limitations are, reward those moments of creativity. You know, you can give them other bonus experience at the end of a session. Possibly that moment might lead to a better relationship with the non-player character or the discovery of a secret piece of equipment. But also, you know, dissuade people from reaching too far too often. If someone continues to reach too far in your game and constantly trying to break what is considered a viable character feature list or skill set, then perhaps their failures grow more and more punishing. You know, there are ways of doing it that aren't too direct. And if you're having a problem enough in the game with this, or you feel that it's really pulling away from the overall narrative or the rest of the player's experiences, just talk with them outside of the game. Now, most RPGs are designed to forge a heroic story, you know, showing feats of legend. So let the players try, let them fail. and occasionally succeed. Occasionally. One of my favorite phrases, and you see me use it constantly in Critical Role, is "you can certainly try." And I'll stick and adhere to that, because I think part of what's fun about RPGs is it's a place where you can attempt things you would not otherwise be able to do in your own life. And as long as you do it in a creative and respectful way that doesn't, damage or disrespect the time and energy that the Dungeon Master or Game Master has put into the narrative, I think it can lead to some really, really awesome, memorable in-character moments. So just through experience, you find that fine line, you find what works, what doesn't, and make sure you discuss that and are clear with it with your players going forward, and you guys are bound to create some really, really epic, memorable adventures. So thank you so much for watching. I hope this has been at least somewhat helpful in your game mastering experiences. You'll be able to see more of these videos on geekandsundry.com, and I'll see you next time.